Welcome back to the Doctor Next Door, where I'm your host, Dr. George Corday. Today, we have a really special guest, Dr. Kimberly Rogers. She is a triple board certified physician in internal medicine, lifestyle medicine, and obesity medicine. She helps patients improve their overall health through evidence-based nutrition, exercise, and sustainable lifestyle change. She is the founder of the Restore MD Medical and Wellness Center, where she combines traditional medical care with lifestyle and obesity medicine to help patients address the root cause of their chronic conditions. Today, it's really important that we remind you that this is not personalized medical advice. This is general health information, and we request that you follow up with your regular PCP or healthcare provider about your own individual needs. Dr. Rogers, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Dr. K. Really appreciate you reaching out, and I love what you're doing here with the podcast. So, congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, I always start by asking my guest, what drew you into your field of specialty? So you're triple boarded. I mean, you did all the science things. You're a doctor, and you said, you know what? I really want to approach this from the lens of lifestyle and obesity. What kind of
Mm.
drew you to that? Was there a patient, something in your own life? What was your impetus, if you don't mind
I
asking?
think that I always had a lifestyle medicine kind of bent. So I grew up in the Caribbean. I'm from Anguilla. My mom is Jamaican. So I just always remember growing up, you know, we always talk about like herbs and food and just the way that what you put in your body is important. So I think that was always something that we just kind of took for granted, and I knew I wanted to be a doctor. And in med school, I realized I wanted to do primary care because to me, it just is that, longitudinal relationship. You kind of do a little bit of everything, just that holistic view of the patient. I couldn't really see myself specializing in just one field and just like focusing on just that.
Mhm.
And, when you train in Western medicine, you learn a lot about how to treat things, how to diagnose, the pharmacology,
Yeah,
but the prevention part isn't something that we really emphasize,
sure.
unfortunately. So my first job out of residency was mainly senior, like 65 and older patients that were kind of socioeconomically disadvantaged. So they had a lot of chronic disease. And what I realized is that the root cause of so many of their diseases was the same things. And so I just was like, I just feel like I don't know enough on how to support people with lifestyle modifications, and even though that's kind of the most important thing, and it's also like the free thing, because a lot of times you're
Right.
trying to these aren't patients that can afford expensive things. So I don't remember what year it was, but I went to a nutrition conference, and it was like Arizona Integrative Health. And that was the conference that really kind of blew my mind, because I was like, oh my God, this all makes so much sense. I mean, obviously this is how I grew up, and so many things that we take for granted that like people should know about how to take care of themselves, we actually don't know. And so I had initially had a website, like I had a blog.
Okay. Yeah.
Even before Instagram was a thing.
Okay.
I decided to get certified in lifestyle medicine, because that's diagnosed, that's the six pillars of lifestyle medicine include things like nutrition and movement and sleep and all of that stuff. And so it's very very evidence-based ways of treating and preventing chronic disease.
Sure.
And then along with that, obviously, one of the biggest chronic diseases is obesity.
Yeah.
And there, that in and of itself is a whole topic. So I kind of then did the obesity medicine certification.
I think there's a lot of great things you touched on. One, the kind of colloquial, like local or your heritage, and like, a lot of my parents are Nigerian and West African. They always have their herbs and stuff that they use. And
Mhm.
today, since COVID, it's really been pressing to kind of challenge science. People are very like trying to figure stuff out on their own. And I think
Mm,
it sucks that, there's this dichotomy, like it's like science or nothing, right? Like you have to be like, you either believe in medicines or you do herbs, right? And I
that
think that
yeah.
the truth is probably in the middle, right? There's some everyday
Mhm,
things you can help, and there's probably a reason that someone goes to school for half their life, and some of this stuff just works, right? Like so I think there's a
mhm,
balance there between science and herbs, if you will. Um,
absolutely, yeah.
and then you alluded to something I truly believe, which is just there's lifestyle things you can do for free, right? There's practical things you can do in your everyday life. Sometimes you don't fully understand. Sometimes it's kind of complicated. Sometimes the way you're implementing it doesn't work, but it does
Mhm,
help. I mean, these things can be helpful. Um, so I think
it
that was well said. Yeah. So
yeah.
we're going to dive in a little bit to obesity, one of the pillars you mentioned.
Mhm,
And I wanted you to just give me your thoughts on obesity. I mean, my last podcast, we talked about it with GLP-1s and everything else, but what are your thoughts from a lifestyle perspective? What are the things patients are missing? Is it more lifestyle? Is it more genetics? Like, what are
mhm.
the things we're missing that makes obesity such an issue for us in the Western world?
So I think, well, what we need to kind of realize is that it's not just one thing, it's multifactorial. But a lot of, we do try to I s it's really hard to kind of pinpoint the one thing, but obviously the rate of obesity is rising. So you can look at it from the decades. If you just look at in America, you can see how every decade the rate is kind of going up over just the last, 50 years. So we can't say that that is genetic, right?
Hmm.
Because obviously genetics doesn't impact within just like one generation.
Hmm.
Genetics do have an impact, obviously. So I would say, the same two people can have the exact same lifestyle, and one person might be more likely to have obesity than somebody else because of genetic
Sure.
factors. But genetics is part of it, but it's not the biggest thing. And the thing about it is, we tend to try to treat obesity as this is a problem that this specific person has, and because they're not doing what they're supposed to do, but it's obviously a systemic problem. It wouldn't be so prevalent if it was just, people tend to think that, okay, obesity is a lack of discipline, a lack of willpower, but why all of a sudden is everybody lacking discipline and willpower, right?
Right, all at the same time. We're all
All of
lacking
this
willpower
all
at the
at the
same time.
same time.
Right, right.
It's not, the problem is just that society has evolved to where every single factor, and I can, talk about Western in this country, but you can kind of extrapolate that globally to an extent. Um, Everything in our environment is almost setting us up for obesity,
Mm,
the food, the highly processed calorie dense food that is so prevalent, um the sedentary lifestyles we lead because of, desk jobs and just lack of activity, the chronic stress that we
mhm,
have, the issues with like sleep. I mean, there's so many factors that impact obesity, and you almost have to intentionally fight every single one
mm.
to maintain a healthy weight in this country, because I always say, like, if you're just kind of going with the flow is going to lead toward obesity for the
Sure,
most.
towards obesity, yeah.
I mean, it's yeah, so
Yeah.
you have to be so intentional, but I think that's where the challenge is, because then people sometimes you feel overwhelmed, like, I don't know where to start with fighting that, and I just, that's kinda, I think, where the big challenge is.
So, yeah, so you hit on a lot of stuff. I think the modern lifestyle, I mean, work-life balance, sitting
Yeah.
in a chair for 8 to 12 hours a day is probably not gonna be conducive to you losing weight, you know what I mean?
Oh,
And then you
absolutely.
get home and watch Fox or CNN, whatever your version of reality is. You do whatever,
Mhm.
and you're just sitting on the couch, right? You're not very mobile. You're more sedentary.
Yeah.
We're not as active. You hit on stress, and one of the biggest things you hit on was food. I think that diet and food is something that we eat, and we don't realize the things we're putting in our body sometimes, and how that complex interplay with what's most available or cheaper
Mhm.
sometimes isn't the
Yeah.
best for us. especially if we're trying to lose weight. So
Mhm.
can you kind of elaborate on the diet and what types of diets do you think are kind of conducive or helpful with trying to lose weight?
Right.
What kind of diets are probably not? Could you kind of talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah. So the human body, the type of foods that we're exposed to now, have been designed specifically to make us addicted to it. So let's be honest, there are people that corporations that spend millions and billions of dollars trying to figure out how to make these foods so delicious that we're gonna just keep eating, right? So
Yeah.
it's if you eat a bag of chips, it's not just a lack of willpower that made you just go through that whole bag. Like, they designed it in a way that you eat that bag, it doesn't even fill your stomach because
Mm,
it kind of dissolves on its way into your stomach, so you don't even actually get that sensation of being full, right?
mm,
And then you talk about highly processed calorie dense foods. If you're eating, whole foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, you eat a salad, um, the salad may not have a ton of calories, but you feel full because it's very dense. There's a lot of fiber. There's a lot of stuff. But
sure.
the calorie dense foods, fast foods, all these snacks. I mean, we can blow through 2,000 calories a day without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just turn the nutritional label around on your favorite snack, and you're like, how is that one little tiny thing 300 calories?
Right.
Right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, of
Yeah.
course, you're gonna gain weight, and then, again, the marketing is also very tricky because so many people think that they're eating healthy because of these marketing terms, and then when you actually break it down, like, this actually isn't a healthy food, and that's
Hmm.
kinda one of the challenges is that, again, we're fighting against, this whole, like, big food industry that is ultimately designed for us to eat more, not to eat less, right?
Right.
And so we're fighting against that, and then we're like, well, what is the best type of diet? And that's the other challenge too, is because you go online or you go anywhere and you got the 10, 15 different diets that everybody is
Right.
promoting.
Right. Yeah.
And which one is the best one? And so I'm a like keep it simple person.
Yeah.
What do all quote unquote healthy diets have in common, right? You can talk about like a plant-based diet, the keto diet. I'm not calling those healthy, but the different types of diets, the carnivore diet, keto diet, blah, 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 they all have some things in common, which is you're limiting processed food.
Hmm.
For the most part, you're limiting refined sugars,
Hmm.
and a lot of those diets also promote, like healthy fruits, vegetables, whole grains. But what the data shows, what the evidence shows, in lifestyle medicine, what we really talk about is a whole food plant based diet. And so it's
Okay.
like, what does that mean? Right. So a whole food diet just means foods that are like real food. So an apple is a whole food. Okay, apple juice is not a whole food.
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and so real foods from the
Yeah.
from foods that grow, and um some people extrapolate a whole food plant-based diet to mean vegan, but vegan, that doesn't necessarily mean vegan, because you can have a plant predominant diet that still involves, meat and some amount of animal products. But
Hmm.
so, the Mediterranean diet is the kind of gold standard that a lot of people talk about is healthy because that has a lot of studies done on it. And I just literally did a post a couple weeks ago saying that I don't promote the Mediterranean diet.
Okay.
And the reason why is because the Mediterranean diet is diet that's Mediterranean is a Eurocentric diet, right?
Sure.
A West African diet can be healthy. A
Sure.
Caribbean diet. I'm from the Caribbean, right? Like,
Sure.
we have our like root vegetables and our
Hmm.
healthy foods. You
Yeah.
don't have to switch to this specific way of eating for it to be healthy. Like, within your culture, within the food preferences that you have, like, if we just lean into the healthy aspects of that,
Hmm.
um, that's a healthy diet. So, like, for example, my husband is Nigerian, and I went to Nigeria. We were like in the village, and um, I remember thinking that because there were a lot of people over 100 in the village, and when people get to that age, a lot of times there's like big posters
Yeah.
celebrating people's
Yeah.
birthday
Oh
on the
yeah.
outside
Oh
of their
yeah.
homes and stuff. So I was like,
Yeah.
wow, it's a small little village, there's a lot of
Very
centenarians.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I kind of started looking at it, and I'm looking at the food that that Nigerians eat, and it's basically a whole food diet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, you're eating things like pounded yam, which is, oh my god, it's a carb, but this is a real food, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is a real food. And then they eat, there's small amounts of like meat and stuff like that, but a lot of the bases in Nigerian food, right?
Sure.
Tomatoes,
Yep.
okra,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
so
Speaking
you
my
know what I'm
language.
saying?
Yep. Yep.
Exactly, and again, I'm Caribbean, so it's kinda like the same type of
Yeah.
themes. So you can have a whole food plant-based diet that's Latin, that's
Mm-hmm.
Indian, that's
Yeah.
Asian, that's
Yeah.
African, that's soul food, but you
Yeah.
just kinda have to figure out how to, like, lean into that. But at the end of the day, it's really just, like, reducing highly processed food, because highly
Mm-hmm.
processed food, anything that has a nutritional label on it and you can kinda look at it, for the most part, a lot of those things are highly processed, and they either have too many calories, too much sugar, too much fat, or too much salt, or all of the above. So
Okay.
just kind of really eating real food. I think there was a quote, I don't remember who said it, but it's like, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know?
really like that. I think that's a really good I like that caption there. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I have
So
to
so
remember who said it.
yeah. So you covered a lot there. So I want to hit a few points. So you said first of all, marketing, the way ergonomics, making the chip bag really small, making it so it's
Mhm,
not calorie dense. So when you finish it, you're still hungry and you're more likely to get another bag of chips.
mhm,
Um, there's addictive things in the chips to make you want more chips, right? You're not satiated, you're not full. You keep
mhm,
going, you know what I mean? Because
yeah,
there's money to be made, of course. Um, and then you hit on and I don't want to skim over this because I think this is such a point about not being ultra processed, not eating a lot of ultra processed foods. And you hit on a lot of stuff that you may see on the back of your label. For our listeners, what kind of quick tips do you have for, like, if I flip over that snack snack box, that would
mhm.
say, hey, this is probably too many calories, or you know what, this is too much sugar, or this is too
Right.
much salt. Do you have any quick tips to help our listeners? That kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
So I always say, like, you gotta read the nutrition label. So like the first thing you're gonna look at is how many calories per serving, right? But then you have to also know, like, how much is a serving.
Mhm.
So if you are eating, cereal, and it says a serving is a half a cup, but you eating 2 cups. Now
Right.
you gotta multiply that by four, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Um just realistically speaking, I find that the serving sizes a lot of times is a little bit misleading.
Okay.
And then, so when it comes to, from a calorie standpoint, keep in mind that on average, if we eat 300 calories a day more than your body needs, you can gain about a pound a week, like on average, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and then the opposite on average is true if you're kind of eliminating 300 calories a day. That could be like one cookie, that could be like a half of a smoothie,
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
don't realize, like, for
Yeah.
example, I like to kind of go through nutrition labels of my patients' favorite snacks with them. I pull it up online. I'm like, all right, let's go through this together.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, what do you mean that green smoothie has 80 grams of sugar? I'm like, yeah, sure
Yeah.
does. So
Right.
then the other thing when it comes to like carbs and sugar, um, I like to look at added sugar. So,
Okay.
added sugar is as it says. So, like, if you're eating an apple, there's no added sugar because it's just a natural sugar in the apple. But then there's also fiber in the apple, right? So
Mhm.
that's why it's a whole food. Then you isolate that, and let's say you drink an apple juice, and there might be sugar added to that apple juice.
Hmm.
Um, so, sometimes because the American palate is unfortunately very sweet. So a lot of times they're adding sugar where it doesn't need to be. So you need to look at that added sugar. And if, we're supposed to, according to American Heart Association, be less than like 25, 30 grams of added sugar a day.
So
And you
25 to
can,
30 grams. Okay.
yeah, you can blow through that in a drink.
with what with a
In a
box of
Coke.
Krispy Kreme donuts.
Not like a half a box, not even a
Half of
box,
okay,
one.
just
Well,
half.
no,
Okay.
like, I'm not even lying, like, one Krispy Kreme donut, like, that's how easy it is to
Okay.
exceed the added sugar, and I'm a sweet tooth person, so that's why
Sure.
I pay particular attention because, like, that's my thing,
Hey,
it's like,
we
I eat
all
the
can
sweet.
fall victim to a Krispy Kreme donut. I'm not above
Yeah,
that. Yes.
for
Okay.
sure, and then
Sure.
the other thing I say we should be paying attention to is, carb and fiber, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
let's say again, an apple has, and I'm just throwing out numbers because I don't know the exact number. Let's say an apple has, 20 grams of carbohydrates, but five of those grams is fiber because fiber is actually a carb. And a lot of people don't know that. Fiber is
Okay.
a subset of carbohydrates. So
Okay.
you got 20 grams of carbs and 5 grams of fiber. So the ratio of carb to fiber is like 4 to 1. That's
Okay.
a whole food because, anything that has fiber has carbs in it. Fruits are carbs, sweet potatoes, there's carbohydrates and stuff. So carbs are not the enemy, but if you have a lot of carbs and you don't have a lot of fiber, that's when it becomes a problem. So sugar
Okay.
is a carb, white flour, all of those things. So if you, let's say, have a cookie and you see there's 30 grams of carbs,
Hmm.
0 grams of fiber, now we
Hmm.
know that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
if you have a food that's 30 grams of carbs, 20 grams added sugar, 0 grams of fiber.
Yeah.
That food sounds like a problem, right?
Yes. 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 It does. It does sound like a problem.
And
Correct.
then
Yeah.
that's just carbs. Fat and solid is like a whole other conversation. But
Sure.
2,000 grams, milligrams of sodium. But if you have like high blood pressure, you should be aiming for like less than 1,500 milligrams a
Okay.
day.
Okay.
Um, when you eat a whole food diet, like when you eliminate processed foods, you're
Hmm.
automatically eating healthy because you're automatically eating a low sodium diet. You're
Sure.
automatically eating a whole food diet that doesn't have a ton of carbs. I mean, to get the amount of sugar in one cookie in like real food, you'd have to eat like a basket full of fruit to like get to
Hmm.
that same amount. And that's kind of the
Sure.
problem with highly processed food is that there's so much in that one little tiny thing.
Hmm.
So that's when you're looking at the nutrition label, like that's kind of my quick
Yeah.
and dirty breakdown of like
So,
what's in.
so, so, and I always recap because you and I are docs, and I want to make sure the listeners understand because you covered a lot of high yield stuff there. So, you started with caloric intake, right? So when you're looking at the back, one of the tricks is, look at the serving and what you're actually eating, right? So the serving size may be half a cup, you're eating 4 cups, right? So you're going to have
Mhm.
to calculate you're eating, much more than the actual allotted serving count. So you're getting a lot more calories, right? So that's one, making sure your caloric allotment is in line with what it says on the box. And then two, added sugar is a big offender, right? That's a huge issue and can definitely throw off your whole sugar intake for the day. And I think you said how many 30 did you say 30 grams of sugar was
Yeah,
below that?
25 to 30 grams
25 to 30, yeah.
per
So
day is the
so yeah,
max.
so you
Yes.
can kind of get a sense as you're eating through the day, if this had 20 something in it, this box of cookie had 20 something and you're going to eat for the rest of the day, you're going to blow through your 30, right? You only got 30, right?
Right.
And then you also mentioned salt, which is a huge issue, obviously high blood pressure and all the things that go along with that. So you said, I think less than 2,000, if I heard you correctly, milligrams of salt is,
Mhm.
I mean, these are all rough estimates, everybody.
Right,
So
rough
you're just trying to
estimate,
get, yeah,
yeah.
below that. And what you can do with these different parameters we're giving you is hopefully you can look at a box of something and quickly surmise like, hey, yeah, this is a lot of added sugar I'm getting, or these are a lot of calories I'm ingesting because I didn't eat the 1 cup or half a cup of cereal. I ate 4 cups, right? So you
Exactly,
can kind
right.
of keep a mental check on that. And then the last point I really liked, which I think a lot of people don't realize that aren't medical or have some nutritional background is fiber is really, really good for you, right? And it's almost like I don't want to say it cancels it out because that's not true, but it certainly decreases the rate of absorption of the sugar and kind of stabilizes that sugar in your system, right? So to
Mhm.
your point, if something's got 10 grams of sugar, whatever, but it's got 5 grams of fiber, that's going to be a lot better for you in general. So look for something to really have some fiber to try to offset some of that carbohydrate intake, right?
Absolutely, and I just always wanna specify with fiber, that doesn't mean, like, go and eat Metamucil.
Okay,
Try to
okay.
get the fi because
Natural
unfortunately
fiber.
with the marketing out there, there's so many like high fiber foods because they're
Hmm.
adding like, psyllium husk or like something that has fiber in it, but it's still a highly processed food. So you when you're trying to get fiber, you're trying to get it in whole foods, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains. That's where the fiber should be coming from.
So yeah, so that was gonna be my next question is you mentioned whole foods. Could you give me some examples of
Mhm.
those? And then obviously a donut is not a whole food. Um,
Yeah.
a cookie with a whole bunch of added sugar is not a whole food. So this
Mhm.
idea of not being more natural or not processed, it's not refined sugar, it's something more natural, can
Mhm.
have carbs in it, but most of the time it's going to be better for you because it's more complex and has the fiber as well. So I think that's well
Exactly.
said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I always like to give the example of like, let's say rice, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Brown rice is a whole food because
Okay.
it's the rice in its natural form.
Mm-hmm.
And then because a lot of us like white rice, they remove the brown part, which is the fiber, right? So now all of a
It's
sudden
interesting.
it's not a whole food anymore.
Right. Right.
And so that's why white rice is not considered as healthy as brown rice because the
Mm-hmm.
fiber is in there to, like you said, help absorb slowly and prevent those like blood sugar spikes that white rice can have. So white
Yeah.
rice is processed, but then what's highly processed is like a rice cake, right?
Okay.
So now you like take that and like you added sugar and all these preservatives and all these other things, and you can go through a whole pack of rice cakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least when
Mm-hmm.
you do a cup of rice, you feel full from that cup of rice because yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's processed, but it's not highly processed. But
Mm-hmm.
you can blow through, 5 or 10 rice cakes because they're puffy and they're light,
Mm-hmm.
and each of those might not have a lot of calories, but it adds up, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of the difference between a whole food, kind of somewhat processed, and like a highly processed food.
Yeah. And then once again that idea that it's not something that's going to satiate you or fill you up because it's so light, but it's
Mhm.
almost a trick. So you eat more of it, but it's like you're just getting preservatives and added sugar. You're not actually getting some nutritional value from it.
Absolutely, because if you look
Yeah.
at the nutrition label, there's 0 grams of fiber in there. 0.
Right. Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 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 So,
yeah.
so I think that's really interesting. And before we hop off food, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. So there are so many different diets, and you hit on the Mediterranean because that is the gold standard. So, are there any that you don't particularly find good? Like, I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff on there, so I'm not going to hold you. There's a lot of different
Yeah.
diets and stuff.
Yeah.
Some people are carnivore. I just eat red meat. Whatever. Or
Right.
I just do the plant based thing. Are you suggesting? I think you're suggesting that really we should be trying to just do an optimal, well rounded diet if I understand you
Mhm.
correctly. Not that
Yeah.
one is the better one, but I don't want to put words in
Right.
your mouth. Yeah.
Any diet that is too restrictive. So when I hear a super low carb diet, which also says like don't eat fruit, that's ridiculous. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so I hate the keto diet for that
Okay.
reason.
Okay.
And also the keto diet is like high fat, low carb, but then what kind of fat are we talking about? So I've seen people's cholesterol shoot sky high from a keto diet, for example.
Mm. Okay.
The carnivore diet, again, also ridiculous. Anybody can fight me on it. That's fine. The reason why people lose weight and feel good on the carnivore diet, I believe, is because, again, you cut out highly processed carbs.
Mhm.
It's not that it's the animal protein that's making you feel healthy. This is my
Mhm.
opinion. It's the
Sure.
fact that you cut out highly processed food. So
Mhm.
any diet that has you cutting out highly processed food is going to assist with weight loss, increased energy, all that stuff. But again, high cholesterol is one of those features of carnivore diet. And there's a lot of data that too much like red meat can increase the risk of certain chronic diseases or things like colon cancer, for
Yeah.
example. So any diet that is telling you um don't eat real foods like fruits and vegetables. I hear about like the blood type diet,
Mhm.
and I'm
Mhm.
just like, You're not gonna tell me because I'm B positive that I shouldn't eat blueberries. Like that's ridiculous. So so just all of these things are
Yep.
just overly restrictive.
Yeah.
Again, the whole food plant-based diet isn't restrictive. I mean, in other than just saying like stop eating crap, just like stop eating highly
Right,
processed
right.
crap and just try to
Yeah.
eat more of like the good stuff.
Yeah. So ultimately, Dr. Kimberly Rogers feels like whole food, not highly processed, not super restrictive diets, plant-based typically do the best, right? And
Yeah.
not adhering just to the Mediterranean diet or anything that would be really hard for you to do, perhaps in Western society, but just looking for those things that are more natural and not highly processed.
Right, and the best diet is the one that you can maintain also.
Very good. I think that's a great point. If you can't do it, you're not going to adhere to it. Don't
If
don't
you
even.
can't sustain it, like,
That's right.
I there's no point. Yeah.
Very good. So a little more on obesity. Why do some people gain weight really easily and they can eat whatever they want, and other people it's just ridiculous. I've tried everything. You know what I mean? What is it about obesity that makes it like that?
Wow. Well, I mean, I think we're still trying to figure that out. There definitely is not one thing. So I that's the thing about obesity, right? As a chronic disease, it is so complex. Like when I'm studying obesity medicine and you see all these like pathways that regulate appetite and regulate how your body stores fat and metabolic rate. I mean, it's extremely complicated.
Sure.
So yes, to a degree, like I mentioned before, genetics does come into play. Like some people are more prone. And there are even kind of interesting things like epigenetics. So, South Asian populations, for example, even though they may be at like the same weight as somebody else, like more of their weight might actually be body fat. And like there's all these theories about why that is.
Interesting.
Back in the day when there was famine in India, um, epigenetics made them hold on to body fat more. So again, I'm just
Yeah.
illustrating that to say that it's complicated.
Yeah.
And then you just have other factors too, like hormonal aspects. So we know that as we get older, metabolic rate slows down. So after a certain age, you can't get away with doing the same things like when you
Oh
were in
yeah.
your teens and your 20s,
Oh,
right?
I
Like,
cannot.
hello.
Yeah.
And then, of course, sex also comes into play. So, women can tell you, myself included, after a certain age, after, perimenopause, menopause kicks in, I mean, there's studies that show that hormonal fluctuation and the drops in the hormones that happen with women make you more likely to process food differently and favor
Yeah.
storage of fat. And then
Sure.
again, you're talking about other things like chronic stress, right? So the person who is most likely going to struggle with obesity is somebody who might have a genetic predisposition for
Sure.
it,
Sure.
is over a certain age, is probably like maybe not eating the best, but then
Sure.
also is struggling with chronic stress, lack of sleep, maybe sedentary, because we know that all of those things, so like for example sleep, you and me can eat the exact same thing, but if I get 8 hours of sleep and you get five, you're more likely to hold on to that food, and that's the as fat, and that's
Yeah.
studies show that.
Yeah.
And then there are other kind of chronic diseases that also predispose to obesity. So things like sleep apnea, things like what we used to call PCOS, which is now PMOS, um, so many different things, insulin resistance, diabetes. It just creates this actual cycle of obesity when you have high insulin.
Yeah.
So there's so many risk factors for it,
Yeah.
that it's hard to parse out in
To
one
pinpoint one
individual.
thing. Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
hit on a lot of stuff: stress, sleep, genetics, epigenetics, even d- differences in ethnicities, perhaps.
Hmm.
That makes it very complex, and it alludes to why it's just not your fault, right? I don't think it's somebody's fault necessarily. Surely you should be doing the things to optimize your health, but it's
Right.
not always that it's your fault and that you did something wrong. Um,
Absolutely.
okay. If you could eliminate one health myth from the internet forever, what would it be? What is the thing that you hear a lot from your patients or you see online or whatever that you're like, you know what? This is damaging. This actually is not true, or it's actually
Mhm.
hurting people.
Wow. Well, the first one that came to my mind is
Hmm.
that carbs are the enemy.
Okay.
Um, I like struggle with this a lot because again, I see people meaning very well who feel like they cannot eat a cup of grapes because it has too much sugar, or that they have to totally eliminate carbs from their diet. That to me is an example of that diet myth that we have, because again, carbohydrates are a macronutrient. The body needs carbohydrates just the same
Hmm.
way it needs fat, just the same way it needs protein.
Hmm.
It's the type of carbohydrate and like the amount. So again, you there is nobody is going to say tell me that it's okay to say you should not eat an apple because it's a carb.
Right.
That's
Right.
crazy. When you
Right.
look in the blue zone, so like I don't know, how much or the audience knows about the blue zones, but these are like places in the world where people are like very healthy, and a lot of people live to like 100 because
Hmm.
the lifestyle is just very healthy. And there is this lots of books and documentaries on this, but I always try to think back on like what do these places have in common, right? And
Hmm.
there is nobody in the blue zones that they're counting carbs in terms of like fruits and
Right.
vegetables
Right.
and that, they're not doing that. Of course, they're when we talk about carbs and sugar, of course, like junk food, highly processed carbs, like we should be tracking and being mindful of that.
Hmm.
um but I think that we kind of get so stuck in the weeds a lot of times that we
Hmm.
try to vilify healthy food, because again, your body needs carbohydrates and your body needs fiber.
Hmm.
Fiber, if I had to say like what was the one thing that we should be tracking to try to optimize health from a nutrition standpoint, I would say fiber.
Okay.
Because where is fiber found? Is found in whole foods. So the more fiber
Okay.
you eat, the more whole foods you're eating. Like it's just
Yeah.
simple,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're kind of like restricting carbs, you're actually also restricting fiber. So the way to that's not the way
Sure.
to go. And
Sure.
again, like I said, in Nigeria, for example, right? Pounded yam
Hmm.
is it's of course you don't want to eat like
Yeah.
like
You don't eat enough for
five.
three people,
You
but
don't want
yes.
to eat enough for three people, but
Yeah.
it's a yam.
Sure.
And it's not highly processed. They kind of like pound it down, but it's not
Hmm.
like they like remove the fiber or whatever,
Right.
from
Right.
or
Right.
like that. But then if you're kind of, oh, I can't eat carbs, like now you feel like you can't eat
Yeah.
certain foods, and that helps with your sensation of fullness. So like we do need healthy carbs.
Yeah, so I think that was a wonderful answer, actually. I mean, I think carbs do get malaligned, and we think of all carbs as the same, but they're not, right? Bread,
Exactly.
pasta, rice, white rice, that is, refined sugars, those aren't the same as eating fruits, which
Exactly.
have one, less sugar in general, and two, they have fiber associated with them, which is much different. And the point, like you made about we do need carbs, like it is a necessary macronutrient, and I think sometimes it's just easy to say all carbs are bad, don't eat any carbs. When, on some level, you need carbs. You don't want to overdo it. You want to make sure you're getting complex carbs that are going to not make your blood sugar rise and give you obesity and all these other issues, but give you a stable level of sugar throughout the day. Very good.
Absolutely. Complex carbs.
So, if someone is overwhelmed, they really want to improve their health, where should they start? Sleep? Should they be looking at nutrition?
Mhm.
Exercise? Should they reduce stress? Like, which one would you start with? If a listener's on here today and they're like, I've been
Right.
doing this for years, where should they start?
So that's $1 million question, and I think the answer is a little different for everybody because what I like to say is low hanging fruit first, right? But at the same time, if we look at what has the biggest impact on weight, I would definitely say nutrition. We have to focus on that because if you can exercise for an hour 4 days a week, and you can burn 300 calories a session. And
Hmm.
then you can walk out of the gym and eat one cupcake and just totally wipe that out, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right? So
yeah,
so if you're looking at what is the most efficient, like what is the easiest thing to do?
yeah.
So when I have a patient, I have people, my regular primary care patients, and I have like a weight loss program. What I actually start to do in the beginning, before we jump in, is I start asking people to track data.
Hmm.
Because if you don't know what your intake and your output is, we're just going to be shooting in the dark. So knowledge is power. We need to know. I need to have my patients log what they're eating so that I can see not just how many calories, but like how much of that is fiber, how much of it is protein, how much of it is added sugar, so we
Okay.
can kind of start thinking about how to like implement changes. And then
Hmm.
how many steps a day are we getting? So forget about exercise, obviously is important, but so many times we kind of focus on like these exercise sessions, but we're not looking at our total movement. And a lot
Hmm.
of times most of us have sit down sedentary jobs where you're not even getting like the minimum number of steps. So like anything
Hmm.
less than 5,000 is considered sedentary. And I would say we kind of overestimate how much we move.
Mm.
So just tracking that, and then also tracking body composition, right? So a lot of times, when people talk about their weight, how much of that weight is actually body fat? How much of it is muscle mass? How much of it is water weight? We need information and data gathering before we can kind of implement a plan.
Yeah.
But so that's usually like my first visit will be like having patients kind of track that data. And then like on the second visit, then we kind of start digging into things. And I always say choose one thing at a time. Like if you're trying to make 5 or 6 different changes at once, it gets very overwhelming. So
Sure.
let's choose like low hanging fruit and then kind of build on that. But I would
Mhm.
definitely say nutrition is like the easiest one, because what I tend to start saying, instead of like stop doing this, is like, okay, how can we get more fiber? How between now and next visit, how can we get more servings of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains? And then
Sure.
after that visit, how can we maybe cut down on added sugar? So it's
Mhm.
just, like choose one thing at a time to kind of work
Yeah.
on. But what I
Mhm.
find is that when we start tracking, like for example, when people start using those apps, their
Mhm.
behavior naturally changes, because unfortunately, a lot of the reason why, from a food standpoint, we struggle is that there's a lot of mindless eating that happens. And so
Guilty.
I mean, guilty also, right?
I'm
But
guilty. Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
not just mindless, but it's like it adds up so quickly. Just being
Mhm.
aware of that can just like change our behavior, even
Mhm.
subconsciously. So just start
Yeah.
tracking again the data, I think, is kind of the first step.
Great point. I think nutrition. Um, uh, you said it in a different way, but you can't outrun eating donuts all week, right? Like, I
Absolutely.
mean,
You
you had
cannot.
your 2 or 3 workouts this week, but you ate a full box of Krispy Kreme twice this week. It's not going to work, right? It doesn't add up.
Absolutely.
That's just not how the body works, right?
The math
And
just is not math.
the math isn't math. And also, which you kind of alluded to earlier, unfortunately, the way the body is, you can burn a lot of you can work really, really hard, I should say, but it's not one to one, right? It's not like, oh, if I do
Mhm.
15 minutes jogging, it'll burn off this one donut. That's not quite how it works, right? It
Absolutely
would
not.
take a lot of energy expenditure, a lot of
Mhm.
exercise to get rid of all the crap you ate this week. You know what I mean? It's not going to be one
Mhm.
exercise session. So I think that difference in
100%.
how we perceive what we put in our body and how much we move is huge. You did hit
Mhm.
on something that we didn't mention earlier with diet, and I don't want to forget this point. Protein. Protein maxing
Mhm.
is becoming a big thing. They're putting protein in everything. Everything on the shelf has protein in it, right? I'm guilty of this too because I like to work out a few times a week and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I'm getting older and I want to make sure I don't lose all my muscle mass and stuff like that. But can
Sure.
you speak on protein just a little bit and how it
Yeah.
is important? But I
Yeah.
don't know if it's always that necessary as it's done commercially.
Yeah, so that's
Sure.
exactly it. I think protein is very important, but for some reason we talk so much about protein and we don't talk enough about fiber. So that's why I keep talking about fiber because everybody knows, oh, we should be getting enough protein. And then if you look online and you try to look at the protein calculators, I mean, you'll get like three or four different protein goals.
Hmm.
Some of those protein calculators have people at a crazy level. There is
Sure.
actually such a thing as too much protein. People don't realize that. I mean, like if you're eating so much protein, I mean, what's going your poor kidneys have to like filter a lot of that, especially animal protein out. So there is such a thing as too much protein.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So I mean, what is the actual goal? Is you talk to 10 people, they're going to tell you 10 different things. I usually say, well, somewhere between 60 to 80 minimum. And then depending on like your activity, your age, your muscle mass, that kind of thing, the number might need to go up. But that's kind of also why I like to track body composition because if you have a good muscle mass and you're building and maintaining muscle, that means you're probably getting enough protein. So then you don't have to feel like you have to protein max to this crazy degree.
Right.
Um, but yes, it is important too because that's one of the reasons, a lot of times when people calorie restrict too much, like let's say on the GLPs, protein is one of the things that I always try to emphasize. Like we got to try to eat because then you're gonna start losing muscle, and that
Yeah.
causes its own health issues. And
Yeah.
protein and fiber help keep you full. So the goal is to like keep you sated because we don't want people walking around feeling hungry all day long. If you're feeling hungry, your body is giving you some kind of signal that something is amiss. So trying to
Yeah.
eat enough protein, trying to eat enough fiber, I think is kind of the two things that I like to
Ve-
focus on.
Very well said. So both protein and fiber. You are campaigning on fiber because there's not a fiber maxing situation going on, right? Like it's not a
Right.
pandemic where everybody's like, well, we got to get fiber. It's all about
Right.
protein right now. So, but you're
Right.
saying both are essential to a well-rounded diet and keeping you hopefully from getting obese and having all those different issues that go along with that.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that one of the important steps you take early in someone's journey with you is tracking. Which apps do you prefer? What makes it
Mhm.
easy? I know there's so many different apps people use. Some people
I
fault that
know.
they start one, they don't like it. This one's too
Yeah.
restrictive. Ugh, I got to put everything I ate today in this stupid app. You know what I mean? So, so which ones are easiest? I think it would be nice
Mhm.
to hear. And then which ones do you not like, perhaps?
I don't have enough experience with all of them to say which ones I
Okay.
like and I don't like. I
Okay.
Everybody is different. So like sometimes the ones that I recommend patients don't like.
Okay.
So what the one that I do recommend, and I don't have any like ties or whatever. I recommend my Net Diary, the free version, and the only reason why is because I actually can link my account to my patient's account so I
Oh,
can like
okay.
link to them and see
See.
it. But
Yeah.
it's similar to like my fitness pal and like those type of stuff too. So
Okay.
it just and I don't even look at it again necessarily from like the calorie goals. It's more so I'm just tracking like what you eat. a lot of these apps too, they've gotten easier where you can kind of scan barcodes. You can, once you start putting in the same things over and over, then it's saved and it gets easier as you go on. But some people hate any app that you propose, and
Sure.
if you're into AI, one of the easiest things that you can do, if you're not morally opposed to using like ChatGPT,
Right.
you can do a recall at the end of the day, and you can say, "Here's what I ate today." Like break down, the nutrients, like tell me how much protein, fiber, added sugar. And it may not be 100% as accurate as if you kind of logged everything, but it's still like a
Hmm.
good way to track.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do that, like if I have a patient who I asked to do the apps and they come in and they didn't really have a chance to do it.
Sure.
I will then just kind of do like a recall with them, like, okay, let's talk about what you ate over the last 2 days or so, and then kind of put
Sure.
that in and kind of get that
Yeah.
number out just to get an estimate.
Yeah.
um but it's just as you go along, also is again, anything that has a nutrition label, for the first week or so, you should be just turning that around and you might get some very unpleasant surprises. I'll tell you that there lots of times when even me, I sometimes will take for granted that what I was eating is healthy. And then I look at the nutrition labels like, oh crap, like I didn't even
Surprise.
realize,
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yep.
something you have to be constantly diligent about,
Yep.
unfortunately. But at the end of the day, that's the thing, is like we have to be diligent. We can't get around it. And the one thing I wanted to emphasize I didn't say earlier was consistency is key, right?
Hmm.
Because here's another thing that I see. I was planning on talking about this in a post. A lot of us lock in Monday through Friday, and then on the weekend, all of a sudden, it's like the weekend doesn't
Hmm.
matter as much, but
Yeah.
you're sabotaging yourself 2 out of 7 days out of the week, right?
Mm.
So it's better to find a routine that you can maintain. So it's
Yeah.
better to be at like 80%, 7 days out of the week, as opposed to 100% and then 0%. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So
It's 100% 3 days or 4 days a week. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that I see that often, is that we kind of just fall off. At certain periods of times, oh, I know this cookout is coming, I'm just gonna do whatever.
Hmm.
And I have a vacation, I'm just gonna do whatever and
Yep.
then figure it out when I come
Yep.
back.
Yep.
But it again, the calories and the weight can pile on so easy, and it doesn't come off as easy
Yeah.
as it piles on. So,
Well,
we
especially as
have
you
to.
get a little older. I'm only 41 in shorts.
Hello,
If you're
yes.
listening, but yeah, I can tell it's a little different now. That Krispy Kreme donut
Absolutely.
sticks with me for a few weeks. If you know what I'm trying to say. Um,
Exactly. Uh-huh.
so so yeah, I mean, so I think that that's good. Tracking using any modality that works for you is better. Consistency, to your point, is more important than one specific way of doing it. Um, and let's make it kind of practical. Let's say you're making a plate for the average American. What would you want on that plate?
Mhm.
Just a random,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. That's a
Dr.
good question.
Kimberly Rogers is making dinner for our listeners today. What 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 would you
Uh-huh.
put on the plate? What did you put on the plate?
So the plate that I like to follow, so the Harvard healthy eating plate, is the
Mhm.
one that I like to print off and give out a lot. And it is just a schematic that shows like, all right, if you have a plate, 50% of that plate, half of it should be like vegetables and fruit, right? Like
Okay.
non-starchy vegetables and fruit. And
Okay.
then 25% ideally should be like a complex carb,
Okay.
something with fiber, right? And, a carb. And then the other 25% should be like a lean protein. So, half of it should be fruit, vegetables and fruit, half,
Okay.
20 quarter a complex carb and a quarter a lean protein. And
I think that's a
then,
good.
yeah, that's just, I mean, and then you kind of fit in there what you want to fit in
Sure.
there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's if you're kind of eating that way most of the time, that is like a healthy way
Yeah.
of eating.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's something easy to remember,
Yeah.
and hopefully easy to implement.
Yeah, you
Um,
can Google it and the picture comes right up.
and it's
You
called
can
the.
even buy a plate, the Harvard healthy eating plate.
Okay. Harvard
Um,
healthy eating plate.
yeah, I had a patient that even bought a plate that, like, had
It
the
actually
design
lines it
on
out.
it.
Yeah, for my
Mhm.
daughters, we have plates that will say, put this in this portion and this in this
Yeah,
portion.
yeah.
So hey,
Mhm.
whatever works, right? Whatever gets us
Whatever
to the
works.
intended outcome. Yes. All right. So
Yes.
a few remaining questions because you've blessed us with your time, and I want to be respectful of that. Um, what is your as a triple boarded obesity and lifestyle medicine doc? It's really nice to hear what your personal exercise routine is like, or what you eat during a day. Could you give us a brief insight into
Mhm.
that? A brief look into what your day is like from an
Yeah.
exercise and eating standpoint?
Right. Yeah, and what I will say is that I am not perfect,
Sure.
and I tell my patients this all the time. Like, a lot of the things that I preach, I try to practice
Sure.
with varying degrees of success. So I
Hmm.
understand that, But so in general, like, I do try to adhere to that kind of, again, whole food plant-based diet. And so what I do, I personally am not a huge breakfast person, and I'm not
Okay.
somebody I'm somebody that feels like if your body is telling you you don't really need to eat yet, like, you don't have to force yourself to eat breakfast because breakfast is the most important. I usually eat somewhere around 11 to noon, and I
Okay.
try to adhere to, like, a loose intermittent fasting thing where, like, I try to cut off by, like, 8 p.m. or whatever,
Okay.
just because I think that the gut does need rest, right?
Hmm.
Usually my lunch I try to make very healthy because I will either get, like, I try to get something healthy from, like, I don't know, Trader Joe's or Sprouts, or sometimes even like Factor meals,
Hmm.
because I try to control that one meal of the day. Like, okay, lunch is going to be healthy, and
Okay.
then dinner, I mean, I cook for the most part, so
Hmm.
we might eat out, like, as a family, like, once a week or so,
Okay.
takeout, but I cook for the most part. So dinner, again, is going to be stuff that I cook, which, in general is going to be healthy, and in general I try to adhere to that Harvard healthy eating plate for, like, how it's gonna look.
Hmm.
Um, and then in terms of snacks and stuff, I have a sweet tooth, so that's, like, my biggest challenge,
Yep.
is just trying to find, like, things that are not doesn't have as much added sugar. So I like chocolate, and
Okay.
I have found, let's say, like, little chocolate snacks that actually have less added sugar because, like, let's say it's flavored with dates or something, as opposed
Okay.
to,
Yeah.
um you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I would never tell anybody, don't eat dessert, don't eat snack, but you can zhuzh it up and kind of make healthy swaps. And that's kind of
Hmm.
what I try to do. And then exercise routine, I would say in general, the last year or two have been a lot more consistent, but that was always one of the things that I struggle with. I try to strength train like 3 days a week. That's my goal. Does it
Hmm.
always happen? Not necessarily. Like,
Hmm.
right now during the summer, I'm swimming a lot because with my kids, and I try to actually do some, like, strength, whatever, in the pool. But in
Yeah.
general, I say optimally, I try to aim for, like, three it's 90 minutes a week of strength training.
Okay.
And then I try to aim for 8,000 steps a day,
Okay.
which varying degrees of success. I don't really get it naturally most of the time because I have to sit a lot.
Sure.
So that might mean, like, you got to hop on the treadmill, or, like, just do some more stuff around the house, kind of
Yeah.
standing, to, like, get those steps. So I try to aim for that daily.
Very good. So
Yeah.
that's nice. Anytime we have a specialist on, it's always cool to hear their their routine. Kind of humanizes us all. We're like, hey, if
Yeah,
she still gets a little piece of chocolate every now and then, okay, I can rock with that. Like that makes sense to
absolutely.
me, right? Because Dr. Corday does like dark chocolate sometimes. Just saying.
Yes.
And the last question I'll give you, and we'll close for today, is if every listener could leave this episode remembering just one thing about obesity and health, what would you want it to be? If you could just say one thing to all the listeners in America about
Mhm.
obesity and health, what would Dr. Kimberly Rogers want them to hear as the last parting point?
Obesity is a complex chronic metabolic disease. It's not just about lack of discipline or willpower. It's not just about an aesthetic issue. It is a very complex issue that is multifactorial. So we shouldn't minimize the struggle. We shouldn't vilify people that struggle with obesity, but at the same time, we also have to recognize how complex it is, because the treatment is multifactorial, and we just have to realize how crucial obesity treatment also is because it is a chronic disease that causes a whole lot of other chronic diseases. So even if we don't achieve the weight we want to achieve, every bit matters. So even, reducing your body weight by 5% can reduce a lot of chronic conditions. So we should always be striving to achieve a healthier body composition and not just kind of accept that, obesity is there
Sure.
and there's nothing we can do about it.
Well said, Dr. Kimberly Rogers. Um, if they want to follow you or be able to hear from your posts and different things like that, where would you like
Mhm.
them to go?
Most of my posts are on Instagram, so
Okay.
I'm Dr. Kim Lifestyle MD. And then there's also that on Facebook, and my website for my practice and for patients in like Delaware, Pennsylvania is restoremdmed.com.
Very good. Dr.
Mhm.
Kimberly Rogers, we really appreciate your time on the Doctor Next Door. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Take care of yourself, take care of your people. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you.